where you can to call attention to it and to force the slow-moving gears of Washington to do the right thing.
But Farrell adds,
don't hold your breath.
I'm Chad Groening.
An Ohio abortion facility with a troubled history no longer exists.
Founders Women's Health Center in Columbus, Ohio, has a 45-year history, opening after the Roe v. Wade decision, where U.S. Supreme Court justices found a right to abortion in the Constitution that doesn't exist in the document. Mark Harrington conducted a press conference in front of the abortuary in which tens of thousands of preborn babies were terminated.
They have currently over $1 million in tax liens against this abortion company from the city of Columbus, the state of Ohio, and the federal government.
A local hospital revoked its agreement to handle botched abortions done at the abortuary. The primary abortionist has no medical malpractice insurance, and the Ohio Department of Health has fined the clinic $40,000 for wrongdoing. An abortionist sliced the uterus of a woman who actually had an ectopic pregnancy, and she is sterile as a result.
They employed a known child sex offender, Tom Michaelis. His medical license was revoked after he pled guilty to sexual imposition while employed by Founders Women's Health Center. Michaelis was indicted by the U.S. Attorney on federal child pornography charges.
Harrington says while it's possible the clinic is closed for good, they are investigating to determine whether the owner plans to relocate, and if so, pro-life counselors will continue their vigil to spare babies and their mothers from abortion. I'm Charlie Butts.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com, on Facebook and Twitter, and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Please call your senators today. It's time to put an end to the liberals' filibuster. Tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood now. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Again, call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Let me get a jump on the broader political front here. I've been arguing for I don't know how many years now the president needs a phalanx, as in the Roman times, yes. A bunch of soldiers that are at the front ranks ready to take on the enemy and charge. And here you see them doing it. Harry Reid has guts, because he's basically saying it's better to get something done than just pretend to be Senate Majority Leader. Right. He's not interested in the form of being a Senate leader. He wants to be the leader.
I agree, Chris, and I think they also voted today to...
Unlike Boehner.
Yeah, I think they voted today to let Barack Obama be president finally.
Welcome to the show, everybody. American Family Radio, Urban Family Talk. Yes, it's time, and it's Friday. Happy Friday to you. Hope you're going to enjoy the weekend and that you're preparing for it and you're gearing up for it. And we have a fantastic program for you today. We're going to talk about what creates success in America for black men. We're going to talk about Amazon destroying Toys R Us. We have Michael Kugelman coming on to discuss foreign policy. And we also have Seton Motley of Less Government. He's going to come on and talk to us. So what is going on there? What audio was that you just heard? You heard someone referring to President Obama. You're probably wondering, what was that? That's a flashback, because I thought it would be really important for us to take a moment and consider what Chris Matthews' rhetoric was when President Obama was in office. Now, why is that important? Well, yesterday we heard audio from Chris Matthews where he discussed how this just isn't fair. You know, this just isn't right. How dare the Republicans institute this? First they had 60 votes, and now they have they only need 50 votes or 51 votes to pass a nominee. And why, how dare they do that? How soon Chris Matthews forgets that it was his guy, Harry Reid, who did this. And it was Mitch McConnell on the floor of the Senate who said, the Democrats will come to regret this decision because the Republicans were staunchly opposed to it. The 60-vote threshold was meant to prevent a simple majority, which we don't have simple majority rule here in this country. That's what the Electoral College is about. That's what representative government is about. That's why we elect 2 senators, and they go on in, 2 from each state. That's why we have in the House the The number of House members that each state has is directly apportioned to the number of people who live in that state, and that information comes from the census, which is done by the government. I mean, there's a little bit of a method to this madness, isn't there? Yeah, it's pretty awesome. When they went to the simple majority, when they executed the nuclear option, as it's known, the Democrats basically said, look, we're not getting stuff done that we want to get done because of you Republicans. Instead of saying we don't have enough control here, we need to run harder, we need to win more in the midterms, we need to get more senators in here who have D's behind their names so we can implement our agenda and get legislation on the president's desk that we want to pass. Or instead of them saying we need to compromise more, we need to find legislation where we give a little, they give a little, we get a little, they get a little, and then they'll sign on to it, and we'll just have to, some of the constituents will be angry, but we'll at least get legislation passed that the American people want to see. But no, they wanted to rule with an iron fist, and so they executed the nuclear option, and they took the Senate nomination process down to a simple majority vote, 50 plus 1. And their plus 1 was, at the time, Joe Biden, because he was the vice president of the United States and the de facto tiebreaker in the U.S. Senate. So here we are, years later, and Mitch McConnell's prediction has come true. They are noticeably perplexed. In fact, it's gotten to a fever pitch, so much so that our good friends over at the award-winning Washington Free Beacon have done a fun mashup for us. And as we are wont to do here on the Stacey on the Right show, we want to listen to it. So if you have, your cup of coffee, your hot tea, maybe you're drinking a smoothie, maybe you're drinking a Coke Zero or a Diet Pepsi, or maybe you're into full sugar drinks and you're having a Barks root beer, whatever your drink of choice is, even if it's just water. I'm having water. I want you to get your drinks and maybe your snack, your cup of almonds or whatever it is that you're snacking on, your popcorn, and enjoy this moment. It's number one.
Because there ain't no way to sugarcoat this. Today, Justice Anthony Kennedy announced he's retiring from the Supreme Court.
The only swing vote on the Supreme Court is gone. Who cares about anything anymore? I'm going crazy, people.
We're looking at a destruction of the Constitution of the United States, as far as I can tell.
They've not allowed somebody to come into the Supreme Court for 30 years. For 30 years, because they won by one vote. It's not going to be acceptable.
And Roe v. Wade is doomed. It is gone. And it's not just abortion. It's eliminating affirmative action. It's eliminating even the possibility of any sort of gun control, allowing a greater use of the death penalty.
You are not a straight white male in America right now. You are probably freaking out.
I think it's going to be almost like Spanish Civil War stuff. You watch.
Get out of my behind. Get out of my vagina. Get out.
Against the reality of the math in the Senate here in a little bit.
You lay down, if you lay down like the experts are saying, and lay down and accept this as history that can't be stopped, you're going to see a political party in serious implosion.
What should Senate Democrats do?
They have to raise hell. That it is time for you guys to get mean and fight. Are you ready?
Yes. I think the Democrats have to say, no way, non passario, no one passes this line.
And it will be unforgivable if Democrats roll on this.
If they allow this to proceed, they're going to look stupid, they're going to look weak, and they're going to be overthrown.
In some ways, it feels like all hope is dead, and nothing can bring it back.
See, we are hearing from the president on this issue, and I do want to listen to his comments.
He's not going to decide this thing.
Say to my friends on the other side of the aisle, you'll regret this, and you may regret it a lot sooner than you think.
Oh, as the children like to yell when someone says something that's a burn. I love it when they do that. I can't do it properly because I'm not a member of the youth anymore, and it's not my era, but I can still enjoy it. Did you hear the apoplectic moaning and groaning, the ejections of sheer terror? They're off their chains. They're like lost in the wilderness, crying out for saving. Well, he's not going to decide. No, I kind of think President Trump is going to decide because he's going to put the nominee forward and the Senate is going to give their advice and consent, and that's going to be it. They're going to have a vote, and it's going to be rough. I warn everyone, if you've not felt like you've seen crazy, a specific brand of crazy, unhinged crazy, if you feel like you haven't seen it yet, just buckle up. You're going to see it. Is it to the point where they're going to be able to stop this? Well, I don't know. Some of the back channel that I've been reading of late has been about strategy. And with Neil Gorsuch, he didn't have any opinions on the abortion issue. So he didn't really have anything for the Democrats to kind of roast him with or hold him up for vilification. And make no mistake about it, they're aware that abortion is their number one thing, but they've been railing about Supreme Court picks and the danger of overturning Roe v. Wade since 1982. They've literally made it one of their central issues. And this is the part where I don't understand how good God-fearing Christians can really support the Democrats. And I've heard all this stuff about economics and the poor, and I understand that, but we have a safety net in this country, and we definitely take care of the poor from the overall standpoint. And our private sector organizations, our charitable organizations, do a great deal for the poor. But it's the Democrats who have dismantled our mental health care system. It's the Democrats who spent all of the money out of the trust fund that supports Social Security, which is a huge safety net. They take your money. They're supposed to save and invest it and give you back what you've earned, you know, so the money that they took from you plus some interest. Well, everywhere you look, if you look at the destruction, it's been the Democrats who are right at the center of the maelstrom. And while they're down there wrecking everything, they're screaming about how we just need more abortion. We need more people to be on government services. We need more government power. The government has plenty of power, and they're not doing what they're supposed to do with it, which is why the president is trying to lower it down. And case in point, and we mentioned this yesterday, and I apologize that we didn't get a chance to get to it, but we're going to get to it today because this is so important, and we have to have this information out there because you're not going to get it on CNN where they have the black host. They have all of the information, the powerful network of televisions in every airport in the country and all over, all the sports bars, all of the businesses streaming CNN. You would think they'd put information like this out there because this is the kind of stuff, if you hear it and you let it soak in, you can radically alter the trajectory of your life by making a few simple decisions. And this works for anyone, but the study is specifically about black men and the drivers of their success. Now, this is important to every American because I've you know, have you ever turned on a television network or something, turn on a program, picked up a book, and it's geared towards, you know, success for men or success for millennials or something like that. You skim through it and you're like, oh yeah, but this would work for anyone. So their demographic that they're trying to reach is one particular group, but success principles work for everyone. And that's why this is such important information. So this is according to Charles Fane Lehman. And in this piece, he talks about the participation in institutions such as the U.S. military, churches, and marriage are all strongly related to black men's chances of reaching the middle class, according to a new report released Tuesday by AEI. Black Men Making It in America, the Engines of Economic Success for Black Men in America is the name of the report, and it explores the effects which help black men in America avoid poverty and achieve and preserve a middle-class life. That group, the group that they studied, has increased in size over the past 50 years. 57% of black men were in the middle and upper third income brackets in 2016, compared to 38% in 1960. By comparison, the proportions for white, Asian, and Hispanic men have remained roughly constant over the same period of time. So that's more black men accessing the American dream. And when they realized that statistic existed, they wanted to find out why. They say that the precipitous and unique rise provides context to what the report describes as the sobering, if not downright depressing news about black men in America over the past decade, which I'd like to point out. Who was the president of the United States over the past decade? A black man. Let's go further. So emphasizing the good news can help correct negative depictions and predictions regarding black men. And this is particularly important to those of us who, my husband's a black man, we have a black son. So I don't want the negative perceptions that are constantly portrayed in the media to attach themselves to my husband or my son. We are in the middle class. We are not struggling. Neither of them have any problems with crime or an inability to function in American society. Rather, it's the opposite. But that's not what the media portrays. And there are some persistent metrics for certain segments of black men that are negative and continue to trend downward. But overall, black men are improving their slate in life, and they wanted to find out why. So they looked at it's Wilcox, Wendy Wang, and Ronald Mincy looked at data from the National Longitudinal Survey of Youth, 1979 wave, as a nationally representative study of Americans who were aged 14 to 22 in 1979. They tracked their lives and looked at them and basically kept up with them until 2016. So they specifically looked at the approximately 850 black men who were included in that, it's the National Longitudinal Survey of Youth, 1979's WAVE. They looked at the 850 black men who were inside that sample group. The cohort wasn't doing so well, with 67% being in the lowest third of the income distribution while they were in their teens and early 20s. 22% of the white peers were in the lower income distribution. So you could see right off the bat, they started from a place of disadvantage. But in line with the national trend, over time, the group fared better. By the time these same 850 black men were in their 30s, they were only 44% of them in the bottom third. By their 50s, there were 52% in the bottom third, which was a decline, but still better than the number that existed when they were in their early 20s. Now, the black men who reached the upper two-thirds of the income distribution were different from their less successful peers in a number of ways. Middle-class black men are more likely to have graduated from college, be working full-time, and be married. As young people, they were more likely to have attended church, enrolled in the military, and according to a standardized test administered by the study's author, they had a higher sense of agency over themselves and the world around them, which directly contradicts what the Democrats are constantly telling black people in America, that we are at the whims of the white man, that white people want to control us and keep us down, that white people are constantly working to institute racist policies over black communities, that white people want control of black bodies and black thought, that white people are actually to blame for anything bad that happens to a black person in America. Those are all lies, but they're constantly repeated over and over and over again. And if you don't feel like you have any control over yourself, any self-agency, you'll immediately believe those lies, adopt them as your own mantra, and you won't take responsibility for poor choices that you've made. The men in this survey, in this study, this was a study, they actually joined the military, they advanced their education, they worked, and they got married and chose not to have children repeatedly out of wedlock. And that's how they made it into the upper thirds of the distribution for income and made successes out of their lives. You'd think I was talking some kind of Greek over here with that. Everyone should know that. Everyone should trumpet that information. It's important. When we get back, we'll have Michael Kugelman of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. Stay there.
Hi, I'm Will Addison.
And I'm Miki.
From Airing the Addisons on Urban Family Talk.
We'd like to invite you to the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference coming up August 17th and 18th.
The list of speakers is amazing. We have Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation, Dr. Clarence Schuler of Building Lasting Relationships, Abraham Hamilton III, Pastor Bert Harper and his wife Jan, Stacy Washington, Lonnie Poindexter, Pastor Dexter Sanders, and we'll be there too.
There's a direct attack by the enemy on marriage and family, and babies in the womb are treated like political footballs instead of life. We want to encourage
bit of a lull in getting our guests, so we are going to continue on with our discussion about this groundbreaking bit of information. And yes, it's groundbreaking. And the reason why I say that is because when something that's simple is the answer, if there's a problem and you want to solve it and you go looking for the answer and the answer turns out to be something simple, there's a bit of, it's a weirdness within human beings that exists, that sometimes a simple answer isn't good enough for us. Like sometimes if you find out that the answer to a problem or something that's going wrong, that it's something easy, it's an easy fix that only takes a minute, or it's something easy that's the answer, but it requires you to think differently about something. Sometimes we'll go all the way around Jacob's barn, as my mom used to say. We'll go around that mountain for 40 years. We'll do whatever we can to avoid changing something that we believe very strongly in. And I think that's what we've seen happen with the Democrats. In their fervor to be the savior of the Black community, they've implemented, government program after government program after government program. And this repetitive reliance on government that has yielded no good results has caused them to kind of look outward and say, well, the reason this doesn't work is because, Republicans. The reason this doesn't work is because evil white people. The reason this doesn't work. And now they've just said, well, Black people just can't be helped. It's not that Blacks can't be helped. It's that the government isn't the proper vehicle for doing that. So in all of the other cultures, you see Blacks from Nigeria and Haiti and other nation states around the world. They come to America, they hit the ground running like other immigrants, and they don't see themselves as Black. They don't adopt this narrative that they're oppressed. In fact, in their own communities, they actually mock the fact that Black people have been in America for all this time and yet can't seem to make it. While they come in, they get their educations, they form their own tight-knit communities, and they really excel. So much so that we've seen in some universities in California, Black student organizations have said, we want delineation between these Black immigrants and real Black people. That's what they call real Black people, because real Black people are still struggling with standardized testing, et cetera, et cetera. But these Blacks from outside of the country are not. So there's something different about them, and we don't want them changing the way you look at how you're failing us. It's not about other people failing us. What happens to us is about 15% of what we experience is outside forces. The other 85% is directly attributable to decisions that we've made and choices, however you like to term it, it's us. And that's everybody, not Blacks, not Asians, everybody. Any person who's alive today, 85% of what you see is their own experiences, choices. It's them. The other 15% is outside forces. So if that's the case, then we don't need a government that controls almost 100% of what a person does. And so I'm going to give you the rest of this, and then I want to dive into this article that I found about victimhood on a website I'd never been to before. It's so interesting how you can just stumble onto something. I really believe it was, it's providence that I stumbled on this website. But so interestingly, the study, it didn't find a connection between family structure and childhood and wealth later in life. Wilcox did not understand why this was, given that previous work by him emphasized the importance of family structure for the well-being of Black boys. But family structure mattered a lot as men went forward in life. So Black men who married did much better than their peers who didn't. Black men benefit financially from the fact that Black women are in the labor force in high rates. And while family structure did not seem to have much of an impact, another variable proved a major roadblock to men's success who are Black, and that's interaction with the criminal justice system. So I would say this: while he couldn't find a direct correlation between a Black person's childhood experiences in their family and their success in later life, meaning if you come from a broken home or an unideal situation as a child, you can still turn your life around and put it in the right direction by making good choices yourself as an adult. But I bet you if they went a little deeper and really examined the decisions that people made who came from intact homes, they would find that an intact home situation as a child precipitates much better decisions later in life. Whether or not they looked at that, the fact remains that the thing we have to take away from this is we need to help that 48% of Black men who are still in the bottom third by teaching them that they have agency, that the majority of what they experience is directly attributable to their decisions, and that no matter what kind of home experience they've had, that they can choose to study, choose to stay away from gang activity, choose not to be sexually active in high school so that they're not fathering children out of wedlock. And choices like that will set them up for a better opportunity later in life. Namely, because the study does talk about black men joining the military at higher rates. And it's the truth. The makeup of our military is blacks are much more represented in our military than they are in other areas of American life. It's because it's a springboard for success. Not only do they train you and teach you how to live and give you a viable skill set, but there's a higher level of accountability, and the work ethic is much, much more ingrained into people in the military. And so it's a great proving ground. It's a great training ground for people to prepare themselves for life in the civilian world. And it's a wonderful way to get outside of your community. When you join the military, the first thing they do is they uproot you and make you go live someplace else. And then they keep doing that for your entire first tour. And they keep doing that. You get some say in where you live, but they're definitely not sending you back home to where you came from. And while you're living out and abroad in the world, especially if they send you overseas, you are forever changed. Your outlook on what's normal, what's expected, what's acceptable, all of those things change. So the point to me putting this out there is clearly this should be the study that dominates the news coverage at CNN, besides breaking news, obviously. They should do a month-long expose on it. They should interview the black men in this cohort, the 850 of them. They should try to reach every one of them and see if they'll come on CNN for a comment. And why do I say CNN? Because CNN has a huge black audience. And this kind of information could empower that person who's feeling so discouraged and upset and maybe looks at their circumstances and says, it's not fair that I'm not growing up middle class. It's not fair that I don't have this advantage or that advantage. It's not fair that I'm saddled with poverty or what have you. And give them the hope for the future that says, it really doesn't matter if you're black or white or if you're growing up poor. It's terrible, but there's a way out. If we could have more messaging like that, more people could understand that that's the reality of America and that everyone struggles, but there's a way to struggle less and to experience more, and that's good decision making. But what I just explained to you is probably precisely the reason why it won't be on there, because you can't train up victims if you're telling them that they have agency over their own lives and that they can literally sit down at the age of 17 or 18 years old, and just before they graduate from high school, they can write down a list of goals and they can say, you know what, I'm going to make these goals. And remember, goals are just what you're shooting for. Sometimes you can overshoot and land way beyond what you ever thought you could do. Sometimes you fall short. But it's not that you hit every goal. It's that you had goals and you're working towards something, as opposed to sitting around blaming white people or the government or employers, rich people, people who have too much money, people who have too many cars, you name it. People are just picking something and blaming them for it. So the article that I found is, again, he talks in this article about being healed. So the article is not about whether or not you're, victimhood in the way that I've been discussing politically. But he references chapter 5 of the book of John. You know that story. It's the man beside the pool at Bethesda. He's been there with an infirmity for 38 years. And so Jesus happens upon the guy. Of course, Jesus already knows that the guy has been there for 38 years. But he asks the guy, he says, "Do you want to be made well?" And the guy is like, "Oh my goodness, are you kidding me?" He's like, "Of course I do. I do. But I have no one to put me down into the pool when the water's stirred up. So when I'm coming, another steps down before me and they get there first." So Jesus just was looking for a yes or no answer, but the guy immediately starts to explain and justify why he's laying there in his victimhood for 38 years. And it goes to the greater issue of whether or not you really want to change. So,
ready.
Oh, okay. So suffice it to say, if you want help, this guy could have said, I'll give you, my first year's wages if you get me into that pool first. I just need someone to get me into the pool. But he didn't do that. That's because he was living in his victimhood. What I'm encouraging all of us to do is to find that area where we might be living in our victimhood and decide we're not going to live there anymore. And that includes anyone who's living in a situation that isn't ideal in America, that you have the opportunity to change your mind about the situation that you're in and then change your trajectory by writing down and setting some goals and saying, I'm not going to be in this position anymore, and then making the jump. Because obviously a whole bunch of these guys did, and this was before the advent of CNN and all of the victimhood, and they are outperforming the entire populace when you look at it by, statistical comparison. So right now it's my pleasure to welcome Michael Kugelman, Asia Program Deputy Director for South Asia at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. Michael, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. It's good to be back with you.
Yeah, so the piece is at foreignpolicy.com, False Dawn in Afghanistan. There's a Taliban peace truce. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so as you probably know, several weeks ago, the Taliban, which is the terrorist organization in Afghanistan that's been waging an insurgency war for many years, it agreed to a ceasefire for the first time. And the U.S. forces entered Afghanistan back in 2001 to fight the Taliban to remove the Taliban from power. It succeeded in doing so, but the Taliban regrouped and has been fighting against American and Afghan troops ever since, and it's been endless war for 17 years. And so it was a really big deal. And for the first time, the Taliban agreed to stop fighting for only 3 days. It was done to commemorate the Eid holiday celebrated in Afghanistan. And after the 3 days, the fighting started again. But what was so significant about it, in my view, is not just the fact that you had peace break out for the first time in years in Afghanistan, but the images of Afghan soldiers, Afghan civilians, and even Taliban fighters hugging and smiling, exchanging gifts, exchanging sweets. Everyone was experiencing peace. Many people experiencing peace for the first time. And I think that was remarkable, and many of us thought that maybe that meant that after so many years of war, you have people in Afghanistan realize that war isn't worth fighting and that there'd be some new effort to launch some type of peace process. Fortunately, it didn't happen, which really makes these heartwarming images and heartwarming moments all the more heartbreaking. Now that I think we're seeing with the war having begun again, it could be a very long time before there's peace in Afghanistan.
Okay, so what could we do as the nation state of America? What could we do to help bring about the end of the war there in Afghanistan? I think 17 years is ridiculous, but I mean, who's asking me?
Well, I mean, see, it's a complicated story. The Taliban has a very good answer for that. The Taliban has said that the moment that the U.S. troops in Afghanistan stop fighting, and the moment that the U.S. government agrees to sit down and negotiate with the Taliban, then the war will end. So they make it sound very simple. But I don't know if we should trust the Taliban. I think my own view is that if we were to stop fighting and we agreed to leave the country, I think that would just give the Taliban an excuse to keep fighting. They'd be in a much better position to do a lot more damage and maybe even overthrow the government in Afghanistan and take over the government and run Afghanistan in the horrific way that they did during the 1990s. So honestly, I've long been of the view that there's very little that we can do in Afghanistan to bring peace. We tried. I mean, we tried to fight the war for almost 17 years. We had 100,000 troops in Afghanistan some years ago, and we weren't able to win the war that way. Now we have about 14,000, 15,000 troops, and we certainly can't win the war with 15,000 if we couldn't with 100,000. Now, the other problem is that you look at the other alternative, sitting down and trying to hash out an agreement with the Taliban to end the war. There's so many disconnects. The U.S. does not want to negotiate with the Taliban. The Taliban says it will only stop fighting if the U.S. does agree to talk to it. And the Taliban really has no reason to stop fighting now. They're doing very well. They're taking over a lot of territory. Afghan troops are completely overmatched. So it's so complicated, and it's so confusing, and it's so heartbreaking. But I don't really see any way in the foreseeable future that anyone, either the Americans or the Afghan government, can do anything to stop this war that's raged for so long. And here in the U.S., we talk about 17 years that we've been there fighting the war. For the Afghans, it's been so much longer than that. There was been 17 years of war, but before that, the Taliban controlled the country. Before that, there was a very bloody civil war. And then you go even further in history, and you had the Soviet Union occupying Afghanistan. So it's been a really rough few decades for Afghans, and really don't see it getting that much better anytime soon.
Wow. Well, I hate to end on that depressing note, but the information that you shared is good for us too as a Christian radio network. We can pray about it and certainly petition our elected officials to try to seek other options, whatever those might be. And I really appreciate the information. Thank you so much. I'll put the link to the article at foreignpolicy.com into all the streams. And it's been great to speak with you again. Michael Kugelman, Asia Program Deputy Director in South Asia at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. Thanks for joining in today.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll be back with more right after these messages.
Physical activity is the new trend. It's not a bad thing unless it has brought a sense of vanity in your life. 2 years ago, I was not happy with the number on the scale nor how I looked. I've never been a huge person, but I was, as the old folks would say, healthy. I joined a gym, gained a personal trainer, even changed some of my eating habits. The Lord checked me one day and in my spirit said, "Why are you disgusted with yourself? Be healthy, take care of the temple I've loaned you, but do it because you want to honor this body, which is your responsibility while on this earth." I said, "You better let me know, Abba." Psalms 139 verse 14 says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." 15 pounds down, I know that even if I was to never look like Serena Williams with those nice framed, worked out arms, I am wonderfully made in his image, and so are you. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Victory McIntosh. Connect with us more at urbanfamilytalk.com.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32, it says, "The sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do." In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for his service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left, just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk.
This week during our family worship time together, when we turned to the scripture, I was sharing with my family, and we were discussing the scripture that says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed." And I was explaining the whole caterpillar to cocoon to butterfly process. My son said, he's 6 years old, Daddy, I get it. We're like the caterpillars. God provides the cocoon, and God's desire all along is, even though we're in caterpillar form, is for us to become butterflies. And then look what he said. But you know when we get into trouble, Daddy? When we try to move from caterpillar to butterfly and we skip over God. And when you try to skip over God, you think you have your wings, but you fall flat.
Tune in to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
And I have to tell you, I had to fight back tears in the moment because I'm saying, oh, Lord, he's getting this.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
She went to a protest just about family separation on the border. Then she turns around and blames ICE for it, about ICE separating families. So first of all, she's got to get her facts straight. Second of all, if you want to do away with ICE and abolish ICE, before she says that, she needs to know that ICE took 5,000 criminal aliens off the street in New York that walked out of her sanctuary jails that she supports. She needs to meet with the sheriffs on the northern border about the millions of dollars in resources ICE has spent on the northern border of New York to shut down the opioid crisis and the cross-border crime. These people want to make a judgment about ICE. We are enforcing the laws that they enacted. So you have a congressman or senator saying abolish ICE because they're too effective. We're out doing our sworn oath, enforcing the laws that they enacted, and they're going to vilify us for doing it.
Yeah, and if they don't like the way the arrests are done, can you answer if one of those people have ever made an arrest in their life that even know the right procedure? I do have to bring you to a New York Times story that says 19 ICE agents, without giving their names, wrote a letter to Secretary Nielsen looking to abolish the agency. What's your response to that?
No, they're not looking to abolish the agency. The HSI branch, which is a part of ICE, they're under a lot of pressure in sanctuary cities. These special agents, they want to do child porn investigations, they want to do drug trafficking investigations, but in big cities, the task force members have walked away just because HSI falls under ICE. They want nothing to do with ICE. I met with the Coast Guard the other day. The Coast Guard's having trouble in California working with local law enforcement because they're part of DHS. So it's not about abolishing ICE. HSI, they're frustrated. They want to do their job, but sanctuary cities won't operate with them or work with them. So they think if they move out and get out from under that ICE moniker, that they'll be able to work better. I think that's wrong.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So welcome back to the show. Welcome back to Stacey on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. It's a pleasure to be with you. Happy Friday to you. It's infuriating to me when I hear this, he's a career ICE agent. This is a guy who's been wearing the gun on behalf of this country, apprehending these horrible bad guys, protecting our freedoms and liberties at the border his entire career. And when he says that these sanctuary cities refuse to work with them on drug trafficking, drug interdiction, stopping these drug traffickers, stopping the sex traffickers, stopping these gangs of people going around raping these young girls. They won't work with them because they're from ICE. And so some of the agents have said, we got to get this work done. Let's just have this part of our work removed from that department. Let's join another department of the U.S. government so that we can work with these cities, some of the cities that have the worst problems with trafficking and drug selling. They're the ones who are also sanctuary cities and refuse to work with them. So these people are allowed to operate, these criminals. They can do whatever they want because they know they're in a sanctuary city, that the law enforcement isn't going to work with ICE to stop them, that law enforcement isn't going to arrest them or prosecute them for the crimes that they're committing because they're in the country illegally. And so it's basically like a do bad things, all you want free card. Can you even, as you're listening to this, can you just, does that work for you? I'm just utterly flummoxed by that. That is absolutely the definition of evil. To say, well, we're a sanctuary city, so even though you know that these individuals are trafficking human beings, they're drugging them up. And if you don't think this is a huge problem, look at the work that Hollywood is doing now. They're including human trafficking in a lot of their movies. They're normalizing it. They're basically, look, this happens in America now. This is what's happening. Remember when most of the crime dramas centered on drug dealing and stopping drug dealers and stuff like that, or they centered on serial killers, murderers, things like that, or crimes of passion. Now a ton of the movies, I've just noticed them on Amazon in the hey, you get to watch these movies for free section of Amazon. A lot of them have to do with people having their daughter or their wife kidnapped and how efficient these guys have gotten in drugging these girls up. And they just use the girls like, it's just like a doll laying there drugged up for people to come pay to have sex with. And the leading individual on human trafficking in the United States is Brandon Darby of Breitbart, Texas. He's done all the writing. He's done the research. He's been in these holding pens. They're like prisons for young girls where they're held against their will and forced into sexual slavery until they're dead. And he's actually rescued some of these girls and brought them out of that environment. And we have charitable organizations here in this country that work to do that. But are you understanding that it's sanctuary city policy that prevents law enforcement from working with immigrations and customs enforcement to apprehend the individuals who are doing these heinous crimes? And so you've got the mothers and the fathers at home crying themselves to sleep every night over their daughters. The daughters are drugged up and being used like garbage cans. And you've got Democrats and these sanctuary cities who are enabling all of this to happen. I mean, if that's not enraging and infuriating to you, what's inside your chest? It can't be a beating heart. It cannot be that you think people being here illegally is more important than rescuing these girls out of that situation. It just can't be. And if it is, woe be unto you. Because it's not an angry radio host that you're going to have to deal with. It's not my job to judge you or to determine what happens with you for eternity. But think through how you're going to explain that at the judgment seat. Law breaking is not going to be tolerated there. If you advocate for it, if you're in the tank for it, if you think it's politically expedient and you have to support it because all the other ones on the other side are racist, that is not going to fly when it comes time to account for every thought, word, deed, action, or inaction. It's not going to work. And so when you hear the message coming and you take heed, that's the wise person who takes heed and changes the direction so that they can escape the coming trouble. And it's the fool who says, yeah, I don't care. I don't like that person. I don't like what they have to say. Or, that message isn't for me. The fool does that. So I won't be held accountable for you because I've told you the truth. So here he continues on. And the ICE director, this is his appearance on Fox News because he's retiring. He's the acting ICE director. He's not actually the director of ICE, he's the acting director. He scorches the Democrats when he says, go strap a gun to your hip before criticizing the men and women of border control. It's number 8.
I think what we need to do is fix the sanctuary cities and outlaw sanctuary cities that are a danger to the American people. And as far as these senators and congressmen vilifying ICE and the Border Patrol, as you said, sir, go strap a gun to your hip, stand on the line, stand on that trail at 3 o'clock in the morning in total darkness, waiting on someone to come down that trail to meet you. You don't know if they're an illegal alien or a heavily armed drug trafficker. Do that job. Stand that post. Then badmouth the Border Patrol or ICE agents.
Tom,
do the job.
34 years serving our country. We want to thank you for that. How are you feeling today, knowing it's your last day and you're retiring?
I'm very proud to serve my country for 34 years. It's the biggest honor of my life to be the acting director of ICE. I'm leaving with mixed emotions because I'm leaving in the middle of a fight. I'm insulted at a lot of the Democratic senators and congressmen that want to vilify the men and women that put their lives on the line every day for this country. Strap a gun to the hip and leave the safety and security of their homes to defend this nation. And they're going to vilify them. And they're going to abolish ICE for things ICE isn't even doing. They're going to abolish ICE for enforcing the laws that they enacted. It's ridiculous what's going on right now. So I'm leaving with mixed emotions. But I can tell you this, I may be retiring. And it was a great honor of running this agency, the greatest honor of wearing a Border Patrol uniform back in the day. But I'm not leaving this fight.
So he sounds a lot like so many of us who've served in some part of, that type of environment. When you're on active duty, when you turn in your uniform or you turn in whatever equipment that the Air Force or the Army or the Marines, when you turn that stuff in, you don't go into the private sector and say, well, done with that. You actually go into the private sector and there's a part of you that stays behind with that equipment. And you, in your heart, know that you'll continue to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And you'll continue to love this country as someone who's gone out and given the extra that it takes to be on active duty or in the Coast Guard or as these men and women have done, the actual immigrations and customs enforcement. They aren't going to stop loving this country and wanting the best for everyone who's here. And the other thing that I want to point out today that I think is being missed in this discussion about how horrible the Trump administration is to separate children is when people in foreign countries, especially El Salvador and Guatemala and Mexico, see Americans protesting against our law enforcement. They think, oh, Americans want us to come there illegally. Surveys don't support that. Most Democrats don't want immigration and customs enforcement abolished. They don't want ICE abolished, even though Senator Kirsten Gillibrand has just come out and now she's joining her voice with other, really ill thought out individuals who are saying they want to abolish ICE. They're just barking at the wind. Most Americans, Democrats included, do not want to abolish an organization that catches MS-13 and stops them from coming into our communities and killing us. So this is a misnomer that is being propagated by media and by Democrats. And you've got to be out there telling, especially if you're a Democrat, but if you're a free-thinking American, you've got to be out there saying, this isn't me. I don't want that. Not only do I not want to dismantle ICE, I want them to be free to do their jobs, even in sanctuary cities. Look at how effective the Democrats were last year in shutting down the debate over whether or not sanctuary cities should be defunded or punished by the Department of Justice or Homeland Security for their refusal to cooperate with a federal agency trying to execute their duly mandated position. Laws enacted by Congress that stood up Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they're actually doing what Congress told them to do. No way should that have ever happened, but it did. And so now the conversation has switched over to what they say is the horror at the border. And I read, it was a post, someone had put in the comments that their husband is a physician, he's a pediatrician, and he listened to the audio tapes of the kids crying at the border, which, by the way, the kids that were detained that the audio is from, that's audio from kids who were detained during the Obama administration. And she said one of his things that he can do, like clockwork, is he can hear a child's cry or a baby's cry, and he can tell you exactly what the baby's cry means, whether it's a cry of I'm hungry or I'm starving or I'm exhausted. And we all know this. If you have children, we all learn our baby's cry. We know when they're just like, kind of warming up, like I need some attention, or when they're crying because they're hurt or they're afraid or they're scared. And there's a different sound to all of those different cries. And so he claims to be someone who can always hear and discern the cries of babies, no matter where the baby is, whose baby it is. And he said the babies are screaming in terror. They're in trauma. And so my question is, why would he support parents who bring their children to America knowing that they're going to be separated from them and experience terror and trauma? Why would he support that? He wants us to think he's such a cool dude because he can decipher the cries of babies even when they're strangers. But he doesn't support the policy that would prevent children from ever having to release that cry. They could stay in their home country with their parents and never be separated. Is their home country ideal? Is any home country ideal? I think I saw a statistic this morning, 4,126 American children separated from their parents every day because their parents are criminals. And so when the parent gets arrested, the children are separated from the parent. I also saw a statistic that the 14 plus million American children living in poverty don't have the same level of comfort as children who are detained by ICE and separated from their parents and put into detention facilities, because the detention facilities are all air conditioned, they're all safe, there's no violence in those, and they're under constant supervision and care. And America's children who live in poverty are not in air-conditioned homes. They don't always have electricity. They certainly don't have 3 meals a day, and they're not constantly supervised by caring individuals who will be held accountable if anything happens to them. Do you see the crazy that's going on here? And so it's time for us as Christians to be wise about this. We have a duty and a mandate to not only be well informed about this and not believe lies, but for us to pray about this situation and to beseech our Father in heaven to help bring about justice and clarity and to right the wrongs that are going on here so that we can have a sovereign nation that cares about individuals in disadvantaged countries, that provides the aid and care that we have provided all along while maintaining our border and preventing the spread of the disease. And it's a travesty, this human trafficking that's going on. Taxpayers in America shouldn't be forced to contribute to that. We got to pray about it. We'll be back with Hour 2 right after these important messages from One News Now. Keep it here.
There's a lot happening around us. That's why Christians need to stand strong on family values and morality. Hi, I'm Ray Rooney, editor of The Stand, a blog from the American Family Association. The Stand has timely, carefully written articles on relevant cultural issues that you can quickly forward to others. Visit afa.net/The Stand.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News on the Hour, I'm Chris Woodward. President Trump is expressing shock and grief a day after a deadly shooting inside a Maryland newspaper office. Fox News Radio's Jared Halpern has more from Washington.
The president says yesterday's shooting that left 5 people dead at the Capital Gazette in Annapolis, Maryland, shocked the conscience of the nation and filled our hearts with grief.
Journalists, like all Americans, should be free from the fear of being violently attacked while doing their job.
President Trump says his administration won't rest until it's done everything in its power to reduce violent crime. Police in Annapolis say the suspect had a long-running dispute with the newspaper that included a lawsuit and harassment. In Washington, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
The federal government is pinpointing the source of a tainted food outbreak involving romaine lettuce. More from Fox's Ken Duffy.
The Centers for Disease Control is tracing an outbreak of E. coli in romaine lettuce back to irrigation water. The crisis is now over, but it left 5 people dead at the height and hundreds sick across the country. We already knew that the lettuce was coming from the produce that was grown in Yuma, Arizona, but now the CDC says an irrigation canal in the area tested positive for the bacterial strain. It's unclear how it got there, and they will not give out its exact location.
The Iowa Supreme Court has blocked a law requiring a 3-day waiting period before a woman can get an abortion, siding with a lawsuit filed by Planned Parenthood of Iowa and the American Civil Liberties Union. The court ruled the law violates the Iowa state constitution. But Maggie DeWitt of Iowans for Life says the Iowa Constitution protects the right to life.
It's shocking that our Iowa Supreme Court justices would read a document that says a right to life first and foremost, and somehow look at that and see a right to kill an unborn child. It's just shocking that they can look at that document, that fundamental document that we have, our Iowa Constitution, and see that the life issue is number one. And so it's very disappointing that they have looked at that document and can see a right to killing our unborn children.
Iowa's law banning abortion after a baby's heartbeat is detected remains in the court system. A law passed in Illinois to regulate pro-life pregnancy centers is still undecided despite a favorable U.S. Supreme Court ruling. AFN's Charlie Butts reports.
In the Nifla versus Becerra case, the nation's high court ruled 5-4 against a California law that forces pro-life pregnancy centers to inform women considering abortion about available abortion clinics and where they can get one free or at low cost. Attorney Thomas Olp of the Thomas More Society tells AFN the Illinois law, which is tied up in court, basically forces pro-life centers in that state to do the same thing.
Number one, it's government-compelled speech, which was exactly what was found to be unconstitutional in the Nifla case. Second of all, it's extremely viewpoint discriminatory, meaning that it's targeting people with a conscience, objection to abortion, and to be participating in abortion.
Thomas More Society has lawsuits pending in state and federal courts, lawsuits that were put on hold pending the outcome of the California case. But that doesn't mean the Illinois law will be found unconstitutional. Not yet.
So we need to have status conferences to basically question the Attorney General of Illinois to find out what their position is going to be based upon the NIFLA decision. We're hoping that they throw in the towel and allow the law to be permanently enjoined, but we're not certain that's going to happen. The defendant, the state of Illinois, might continue to fight the case.
After all, it took a 15-year legal fight in Illinois by Thomas More Society to get the parental notification law in effect, so that parents would be notified should their minor daughter seek an abortion. I'm Charlie Butts.
In final news this hour, the current national average for a gallon of regular gasoline is $2.85. That's down 10 cents from this time last month, but up 60 cents from this day last year. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Get some analysis now from the outside advisor to President Trump for judicial nominations. Leonard Leo joins us tonight. Leonard, thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
First, put this in perspective about how big a deal this opening, not just a opening, this opening is.
Sure. Justice Kennedy's been on the courts for over 30 years, and he's played an enormously important role in helping to fashion so many different areas of our jurisprudence, from gun rights to freedom of speech, separation of powers, federalism. It's a big deal.
The process. I'm being kind of whispers that the Neil Gorsuch blueprint is basically what is going to move forward.
Yes. The president had enormous success in nominating Neil Gorsuch to the court, and I think that's the kind of process that you'll see going forward, another nominee like him.
Is the sense, you heard the Senate Majority Leader, that this is going to happen quickly? Is there a timeline on this?
Usually it takes the White House about 2 or 3 weeks to get a nomination out, and then normally it takes about 70 to 100 days for a Senate to confirm. So the leader's right. You're looking at the fall, and you could have somebody seated just before the beginning of the October term of the court or just after it starts.
What about the Democrats, including the Senate Minority Leader, who are out there saying this can't happen? It needs to wait till after the election.
President appoints justices to the court. It's one thing to say that, just before a presidential election we should have a cooling off period, but we have a president. The American people knew who he was going to nominate because he gave them a list, so we should just move forward.
Wow. So, yeah, that's the way things would work in normal world, but this is bizarro world. So we got to prepare ourselves. We're now on the whirlybird. The whirlybird that will make this as bumpy and as contentious a process as it could possibly be. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. StacyOnTheRight.com is the website where you can check us out, subscribe, et cetera, et cetera. I want to mention to you the Marriage and Family Conference that's being held down in Tupelo at Hope Church, August 17th and 18th. I'll be there. So many of the hosts on AFR and Urban Family Talk will be there. We really love to meet you, shake your hand, and have you participate in the festivities. It's going to be great. And I'm so excited about just getting a chance to go down. And so full disclosure, I've only been to Tupelo the one time, which was for Share-a-thon last year in the fall, not the spring one, but the fall one for 2017. And we were not there very long. I took our oldest daughter with us. Well, it was just she and I. And we had such a good time, but it was kind of a short in and out type of a visit. And so this time, it's not going to be much more than that. I'm not going to be there a long time, but it'll be another chance to go down and kind of hang out at AFR a little bit and just reconnect with so many of the good people there and get to see people that I kind of work with, but virtually get to see them in person. So I'd love to meet you there if you decide to join us for the conference. We'd really, really love to see you. This hour on the show, we're going to continue our conversation about the possibilities and the it's just a great opportunity. We knew this was going to happen. If anyone is, with their eyebrows up in their hairline, looking shocked, making their mouth into a little O, like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe Trump's going to appoint a second justice. Where have you been? It's not just 2. There's a possibility he could do as many as 4. If Clarence Thomas decides to retire, he's older, but still, he's still sharp, but he might want to spend time with his family. He has kids and grandkids, etc. And then obviously Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was counting on a Hillary Clinton win so that she could retire and be replaced with a liberal justice. She's 85 years old. She's been hanging on for a long time. Her best opportunity to have left would have been during the Obama administration, but she chose not to. And so now she's looking at, hanging on until she's 88 years old? So anyway, it's not like we didn't know this was a possibility, which is why so many of us who Trump wasn't our first choice during the primary, pulled the lever for him anyway, because we knew on Supreme Court picks, he'd already said, I'm not even going to choose these people. I'm going to go with a list of recommendations from the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society, 2 of the best organizations in America for conservative policy. So once you've got that out there, he put the list out before he was even, at Election Day. It was a no-brainer for me. We knew this was a possibility, and now, praise God, here it is. But you've got Trump judicial advisor Leonard Leo talking to Brett Baier on Fox News about this whole thing, this whole opportunity. And he's laying everything out, trying to set some expectations. The president has also issued a timeline. He's expecting to get it done in 90 to 100 and some odd days. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to see the actual nominee put forward by the White House. They're interviewing their top picks right now, speaking with them, asking them questions, etc. So it's not a surprise. But Leonard Leo had the SCOTUS nominees kind of, he laid out a little bit of information about them, and it's number 6.
He's saying that this list is unacceptable, but in reality, because of the vote structure in the Senate, there's really nothing Senate Democrats can do, is there, to stop a nomination from going forward, aside from tripping that person up in a hearing?
If the president nominates someone extraordinary, like Neil Gorsuch again, I think it's very hard to stop that kind of a nomination. The American people were widely supportive of Neil Gorsuch, and Justice Gorsuch had bipartisan support in the Senate.
Okay, let's talk about a couple of the names that we're hearing about already. John mentioned some of them. Judge Brett Kavanaugh, D.C. Circuit, U.S. Court of Appeals here in Washington.
Very distinguished service on the federal bench, hundreds of opinions published out of the D.C. Circuit. Someone who understands that those limits on government power in our Constitution are inextricably intertwined with the preservation of freedom in our country.
Will he have problems with Democrats?
Well, as Senator Schumer has said, anyone the president nominates will have problems with Democrats. But ultimately, I think red state Democrats and moderates in the Senate will understand that someone like Brett Kavanaugh or another Neil Gorsuch type nominee would be quite suitable for our country.
And that person would. I mean, I don't think I'm going to love every ruling by Neil Gorsuch. He's already shown a little bit of a penchant for being, I mean, he's strictly according to the Constitution, but he's also he's got a little streak in him that, I know you guys saw me with my little mug. I was so excited about somebody making those Gorsuch a Babe mugs. Not that there's any attraction there or anything, but I thought the mug was super cute. So I was, drinking out of my mug and showing it off when it was time for him to be nominated, and he went through the confirmation and all that. And that was fun, and I'm all about, we have to have fun. We've been put here to enjoy life, to have life and have it more abundantly. And so we're not supposed to be sourpusses just sitting around looking all dour and never, ever really appreciating the levity of some of these moments. So, for sure, I'm going to have fun with it. But I don't think Neil Gorsuch is going to be he's not going to be a Clarence Thomas for me, where I can't find a moment where we disagreed. He's not going to be that guy. But I do think he'll be reliably conservative. And on the times where he doesn't really, his opinion isn't my thing, I still think I'm going to be able to see the reasoning behind it, because he's a strict constitutionalist. He's a textualist. So that's fine. And so someone like Neil Gorsuch would be great. I tend to think you know, and I'm not a betting person, but I would say it looks to me like it's the lady who's going to get the nod. And let me see if I still have my little sheet. I know I have to go through here and recycle. One day I'll do a video. I'll do a quick live video, and I'll show you guys the mayhem that's going on in here in this office. Sometimes I know my family members come in here and they want to use one of the computers, and they've got to be thinking, good grief, you know, oh, here it is. I did save it. So I tend to think it's going to be Amy Coney Barrett. And the reason I think that is because the president has a tendency to put women in positions of power. He loves promoting women. And while you guys know that's not my thing, picking someone just because of their characteristics, I feel like the person has to be well qualified and that the characteristics should not rule the day. I also have some information that I was able to get from a good friend of mine who's been a guest on the show. And she sent this out, and it's fantastic. It's from JAG, Judicial Action Group, and it's public information, but I wasn't aware of it until she sent it over. And she was talking, in this piece, they give a brief summary of potential Supreme Court nominees, and you know, they have a little bit of a preface to it, talking about the important decision of Trump's presidency. You know, obviously, Neil Gorsuch's decision's already been made, so this would be the next most important decision he'll have to make. And they give the prospects in tiers. And so they talk about, in their opinion, and this was issued, the draft was updated 6/28/18, but this is who they consider to be the first tier prospects for the nomination. First tier according to their judicial records, so their records on opinions that they've issued. They say their first tier prospects are Amy Coney Barrett, Ted Cruz, and Thomas Lee, so the brother of Mike Lee. Judge Amy Coney Barrett is aged 46 years old. She was nominated and confirmed last year to the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit. She was added to President Trump's Supreme Court prospect list on November 17th of 2017. And as a longtime law professor at Notre Dame, her judicial philosophy is well known from her extensive writings on the role of the judiciary, precedent, judicial intrusion into legislative affairs. She would be a solid constitutionalist on the Supreme Court and was persecuted for her Christian faith during her Senate confirmation hearing. You guys remember this? Oh, it was terrible. We played the audio on the show. Yeah, I thought she looked familiar to me. She was good. So she was confirmed with the votes of all Republicans and 3 Democrats, making her a bipartisan supported candidate. Some in D.C. claim Barrett should be older, but if confirmed, she would be 3 years older than Justice Thomas and have more experience than Justice Kagan at their confirmations. By Republican and Democrat standards, Barrett has the necessary experience and age to serve on the Supreme Court. Now, the next top-tier candidate they name is Senator Ted Cruz, who's not on the list of prospects, but it has been reported that the opportunity has been presented to him. But his thin record of writings does not fill the void. Also, his judicial mentor is not known for being a constitutionalist and made unfair racial accusations against Chief Justice Roberts during his confirmation. I'm sorry. Senator Ted Cruz, I'm flipping over to the back. You guys, this is what happens when I'm reading from the information. Okay, scratch that. So it's Senator Ted Cruz. He's the second first-tier prospect, and it has been reported that Trump strongly considered Cruz for the Scalia vacancy and may have even offered to nominate him, but Cruz's views on the role of the judiciary are well known. In 2015, he convened a Senate subcommittee hearing on the problem of judicial activism that properly defined the problem and showed a willingness to provide legislative accountability to address the crisis. Cruz is well tested and known to believe that the role of the judiciary is to decide cases, not to legislate from the bench, and further, that judicial usurpation of legislative power must be addressed through the constitutional system of checks and balances. Okay, that sounds much more like Ted Cruz. And then the third top-tier prospect is Judge Thomas Lee, age 53. He's a justice on the Utah Supreme Court. Thomas and his brother, Senator Mike Lee, are tested constitutionalists. Their father, Rex Lee, was Solicitor General for President Reagan. Wow. Lee is a constitutionalist and a textualist of the First Order. He correctly points out that judges should not feel bound to follow prior judicial opinions when they contradict the original meaning of the Constitution. Oh, that's fantastic. He would be a formidable and vocal leader for originalism and textualism in the Supreme Court. He eloquently refutes the evolving Constitution doctrine as the antithesis of an originalist interpretation of the constitutional text that results in having no Constitution at all. Wow, that's good stuff. So that's the top tier according to this group. Now, I want to give you just the names of the third tier. Well, okay, second tier prospects are Thomas Hardiman, Raymond Kethledge, and Don Willett. Remember I said Don Willett was a favorite for me. And then the third tier prospects are Brett Kavanaugh and Amal Thapar. Now, here's why this is important, this third tier. Judge Brett Kavanaugh is age 53. He's been a judge on the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit since 2006, and he's personally well-liked in D.C., but his record has bred concern amongst pro-lifers and social conservatives. Oh, he's got some interesting things here, and they're not good. The concern with Kavanaugh is not that he would be another Justice Ginsburg, but that he could be another Justice Kennedy. So someone who's not reliably conservative when ultimate issues are at stake, such as the ruling with Obamacare. And then Judge Amal Thapar. Now, if you are someone who follows the SCOTUS blog and you pay attention a little bit, this is a guy who you probably have never heard of before. I hadn't ever heard of him before. He's age 49. And the problem with him is that he is the one with a thin record of writings. He had a judicial mentor that was not known for being a constitutionalist and made unfair racial accusations against Chief Justice Roberts during his confirmation. Too much is unknown about Thapar. His relationship with Senator McConnell may be politically beneficial, but we simply don't know enough about his judicial philosophy. The other thing is Judge Thapar checks off that minority box, but in the end, is it about checking off boxes, demographics like the Democrats, or is it about getting a strict textualist onto the court? I'd rather the latter. So, okay, when we get back, we'll have Seton Motley of Less Government. That's going to be a great interview. You don't want to miss it. Stay there.
Meet Dan Steiner, president of Preborn.
Jill came into our center about 8 months ago, and she was in a really difficult spot because her husband her boyfriend was incarcerated. She didn't have a place to live. She's out on the street. She came into our center, and when she saw her baby on the ultrasound, she says, I've got to find a way to do this. She changed from abortion-minded to wanting to choose life for her baby, and that's where we came in, coming beside that ultrasound with baby clothes, with housing for her. Her baby just delivered last Wednesday. It's a little boy. He's beautiful. That's the power of ultrasound.
80% of women choose life when they see their baby on ultrasound. To find out more about how you can help save a baby's life, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
The President and some members of Congress have started an important conversation about criminal justice reform, but while we're having that conversation, it is crucial that we get some of the facts straight. At a recent conference, Senator Elizabeth Warren lamented this country criminalizes low-level drug offenses. She said more people are locked up for low-level offenses on marijuana than for all violent crimes in this country. That makes no sense at all. She is certainly correct. It doesn't make any sense. That's because it isn't true. Rafael Mangual, in a recent op-ed, looks at the numbers. The total incarcerated population in the U.S. is just over 2.1 million. In the federal prisons, there is a high percentage serving time for drug offenses, but these are not pot smokers. Most are federal drug traffickers. In the state prisons, only about 15% are serving time for a drug offense. Again, the vast majority are in for trafficking. And it's worth mentioning that even the small percentage in for drug possession may have settled on that charge after a plea bargain. In addition to the argument that we're putting people in prison for minor drug offenses is the argument that we're also putting too many black men behind bars. Let's begin by stating the obvious. There is a racial disparity. African Americans make up about 13% of the population, meaning that black men make up about 6.5% of the American population. Nevertheless, they make up approximately one-third of state prison populations. The latest figures from the Bureau of Justice show that blacks constitute 35% of violent offenders, 45% of weapons offenders, 27% of property offenders, and 31% of drug offenders. Those figures explain why more black men are behind bars and illustrate why we need to get some of these facts straight. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
Welcome back to the show, you guys. Welcome back. It's good to be with you on a Friday. The sun is shining after the storms yesterday. And so what I have to post on Instagram, you guys will have to look for this before you unplug from social media, is check out my Instagram for some. We were upstairs and we saw through these big doors in our bedroom that faced to the outside that it looked like a pink light coming from outside. So we run downstairs and look out, step outside the house, and the sky is pink and purple and the sun is setting. I'm like, what's going on here? So it's a thunderstorm and it's making everything look weird because the sun is setting. So we go running down our street to catch the biggest view of it that we could. And I got all these amazing pictures of this weird purpley, pinkish. I mean, it was just something amazing last night. And I saw other people who actually made it to their Instagram accounts with their pictures. But I'm posting mine tonight because it was such an uplifting thing to kind of just, it was just so much to look at, you guys. Just look up and there's all these different, 8 different kinds of clouds, and everything's moving fast because the thunderstorm had already passed through our area and it was to the east of us and moving fast. And so you've got some lightning but no rain, and the sun is setting and you can still see it, and you can see a thin line of the blue sky where there's no clouds at all, and then all of these fluffy pink and purple clouds that were just floating overhead. And I got some really cool pictures, so I'll put those up right after the show. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome my friend and buddy who has the cutest dog on Instagram besides Bentley. He's obviously cute, but he's super cute. He's not cuter than our dog Bentley, but he's super cute. He and his dog and Bentley could be friends. And also, he's the founder of Less Government. Seton Motley, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you very much. I'm watching Rufus roll around on a bed here at the house.
Of course you are.
Yeah.
Rufus is kind of famous.
He weighs 6.25 pounds, so he's a beast.
He's a beast. Our dog weighs, he's down to 13 pounds. He was 16 pounds, but the doctor has ordered him to lose 2 more pounds. We don't know how he's going to do it. So he's a thinner, but still fluffy and still cute. And yeah.
No, Rufus is a natural mesomorph. He's in good shape.
Okay, so now that we've updated everybody on the status of our pets.
There he is. Hello.
Yeah, hello, Rufus. Let's talk about this. So you send out the Less Government kind of report on the regular basis, and I always read them, and I'm always fascinated by the stuff that you're able to pull out, and it's always about less government. But this story here really kind of hit me right between the eyes because I rightly assumed that Toys R Us, part of their demise is we have a declining birth rate. Fewer people are having children, but it's not just that. Toys R Us also really suffered greatly with the advent of Amazon. So I just assumed it was people not liking the customer service at Toys R Us. They go to Amazon instead, which is the thing for me. If anybody ticks me off in a store, I immediately go to Amazon and I find out if I can buy the same thing on Amazon, and then I never go in that store again. So when I was considering it, I thought people just don't like the Toys R Us experience anymore. It was just really annoying. But that's not the story, is it, Seton?
Well, no. I mean, look, I think what you may have experienced, because it was part of the downward spiral after what I discovered, which was in the late 1990s. Of course, the government privatized the internet, wisely so, in the mid 1990s, and then people were starting to try to figure out, okay, what is this? What's it going to mean, et cetera, et cetera. And then a couple of really intelligent visionaries saw its potential much better than other people did. You got Sergey Brin and Larry Page at Google as 2 examples. You've got, the guy from AOL, whose name escapes me. And one of the guys that very early on looked at it and said, aha, this is going to be something, was Jeff Bezos from Amazon. So what happened was he had a vision for Amazon. Remember, once upon a time, they just sold books. And he had a vision for much, much, much more than that. And I think he did this in part to pick their brains on the toy business. He went to Toys R Us, and in 2000, they struck a exclusivity deal, which was Toys R Us pays Amazon $50 million a year to be the exclusive toy provider on Amazon's website. and they got a percent.
Oh no. Okay, I know he's. Oh, there you are.
On paper, it's a win-win because on this new thing, the internet, Toys R Us doesn't have to figure out how to. The art and the science of online sales, Amazon will do that for them, and Amazon doesn't have to make toys, right? Toys R Us has a brand name, that name has cachet, and they'll have those toys on the Amazon website. Well, Toys R Us started screwing them and started putting other toys on the website. And in 2004, Amazon sued and won. And
Toys R Us.
Judge just ripped. It was a 131-page decision, and I think her name was Judge McVeigh, and she just ripped Amazon a new one. But here was the thing that I discovered that just completely blew me away. Amazon's deal with Toys R Us precluded Toys R Us from having their own website.
Okay, so you said Amazon won, but it was Toys R Us that won, right?
2006. Now, that means every other toy company had about a decade head start on them. And as you know, a decade on the internet is an eon in human years. And you'll never ever catch up on that kind of head start. And so I posit in the piece, and I think this to be true, that was the first nail in the coffin for Amazon. Them being screwed by Amazon, not having a website and adhering to their end of the deal with Amazon. And then by the time the judge had to rule and let them out of the contract and say, okay, now you can build a website in 2006. And I think that was the first nail in the coffin of Toys R Us. Because while all their competitors were shifting to this hybrid of brick and mortar and online retail, they were precluded from doing that. They were slaves to Amazon. And then Amazon started cheating on them with other toy manufacturers. And Toys R Us was still adhering to the contract and not building a website. And so not getting to the web till 2006 when everybody else did years before, I think was extraordinarily damaging to Toys R Us going forward.
Yeah, so you said that Amazon won, but it was Toys R Us that won the lawsuit. But it didn't matter.
Sorry, I meant to say Toys R Us.
Yeah.
Toys R Us won the lawsuit. Yeah. Because I said the judge ripped Amazon.
Yeah. So, but it didn't matter because they already.
131-page decision. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I misspoke. Yeah.
No, that's
Toys R Us
okay.
won the website, and then part of what they won was they got out of the jam of you can't build a website. The judge said in 2006, okay, you can build your own website now.
But there's a huge lesson here that's a byproduct of this story, which is if it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true. If you're a company and you want to be viable in the marketplace for the foreseeable future, you don't, at the advent of a new big thing like the internet, decide to let some other company be in charge of your presence there, especially with a bad actor like Amazon. They literally, if you look at it, I read your piece, they drove Toys R Us out of business with their decision to go behind Toys R Us's back and sell toys also, and then to kind of hold them to their agreement where they couldn't stand up a website. I mean, it's like the worst thing ever, and it makes you feel like, wow, if they were willing to do that back then, like what else are they doing right now that we haven't found out about?
Now that they're 1,000 times more powerful than they were then. I mean, they were powerful back then in the sense that, one, they were big already, but two, they had a guy at the helm who understood the internet so much better than just about everybody else. You've now got a lot more people that understand it, maybe not to the granular level that somebody like Bezos does, but you've got more competition in that space. But now Amazon, he's the richest guy on the planet. His company is $800 billion market cap, I believe, if I'm remembering properly. And he's one by one. He just bought a big online pharmacy. He's going into the prescription drug business, and he's driving out. He's driving out competitors. That's why he bought Whole Foods. He's looking to monopolize as many areas of the economy as he can.
So what is the answer for us? Because, Seton, I've already shared my plan. It's not a secret. We're huge Amazon Prime users because of the convenience. But I've also become aware that Walmart, which is a company that I actually like, and I'm not afraid of. Walmart is working on.
They're doing 2 days too.
They're what?
They're doing 2-day delivery too now.
Yeah, and they have this website that they purchased, and that website is like a tiny Amazon, but it's still small enough that they were able to purchase it so they can take its the kind of the structure.
Kind of make it theirs.
Yeah, and make it theirs and then expand it, because anything that Walmart takes and implements over their whole store suddenly becomes similar in size to Amazon if it's done well and it's done right. So I'm just waiting on them to figure out how to do it, and then I plan to switch to them because they are not a corporate raider. They're not demonic in their outlook towards other companies, and they don't seek to rule over every area of your life. They just want to sell you stuff.
Right, and their brilliance that made them so huge was they were bears on inventory. They were very good at tracking on a day-to-day basis what products weren't selling, and if a product didn't sell for like a week, they marked it down, got it off the shelf, and put something else there. That's how they got so big. Was they were really detail attentive to what was selling and what wasn't in their stores. So I'm hoping that they can translate that into online success as well. Listen, I live in a suburb of a town of 2,000. It takes me 20 minutes to drive to the grocery store here. So I'm definitely an Amazon Prime user as well. And but yeah, I mean, Bezos is a bad dude, and he's doing a lot of bad stuff in a lot of bad ways. I'm working to stop him from getting an exclusive 10-year contract to be the sole cloud computing provider to the Defense Department, the entire Defense Department.
What a terrible idea! Who is thinking that's a good idea? I mean,
Mattis, I think.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I'm serious. Mattis likes Bezos. They met and he liked him, but yeah, it's a 10-year exclusive. It's at least $10 billion.
Any exclusive contract with him should be looked at with scrutiny.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get that. At the very least, forget it's Amazon. Nobody should be the exclusive provider, because if it goes down, the entire Defense Department goes down.
Thank you.
There should be multiple providers providing, like I say, 5 providers providing 40% of the product each, right? So that's 200%, which means each provider there are 2 providers providing each thing. So if one goes down, they have immediate access to the backup. One provider for all of it seems to me to be a little dumb. And then the fact that it's Amazon makes it even worse.
Well, Seton, my husband's in IT, and if there's anything I know about, it's the proliferation of dual redundancy in the private sector when it comes to all of the computing. So anything that has to do with computers or networks, they have dual redundancy. And that's really old tech. Like, I'm sure now they're talking, triple redundancy, quadruple redundancy.
My 200% model, I just made it up off the top of my head. I said that's a bare minimum. Yes.
Right. So I don't understand why the U.S. government would be any less into establishing redundancies.
Something like the Defense Department, who does redundancies everywhere else in everything they do.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm hoping that's not going to be the case. Like sometimes, and I get it. Like when people say, "Oh, this person likes Jeff Bezos," who wouldn't? I mean, imagine what he's like, because aren't you ultimately more comfortable with yourself and confident and able to be just like the best personality when
having money?
Yeah.
Even if you look like a lizard, which he kind of does.
Well, and also he and his wife as a couple, like they're the kind of people who who they are, so obviously you're almost in awe. But if they were just regular people, you come on. I'm not being rude. I'm not.
Yeah, you know the old joke. The difference between weird and eccentric is about $100 million.
Well, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he has room to do it. 3-4 times as much.
Was not doing runway modeling prior to founding Amazon.
And he doesn't have to, because most people who are insanely attractive, it's a 50-50 chance they're going to be horrible or they're going to be just as great on the inside as they are on the outside. You never know. But it's the point. The point is that his business actions kind of I don't care what he looks like, and I don't care how nice he is. Really, it's what is his history? And this is the mistake, Seton, that's been made with the founder of Facebook. Over and over and over again, he shows up looking very nervous and awkward and says, "We don't understand."
Months ago, I These guys are exponentially more powerful than the robber barons of the late 1800s.
And they're more dangerous because they keep lying. And this is just what I'm looking at with the Facebook after reading everything about how he keeps apologizing for doing the same thing. Oh, no, we've had a data breach. I should have been more careful.
Right.
Over and over.
This is our fifth meeting with conservative leaders to apologize for blocking
we're
them
working
on our
on
platform.
we're working on not throttling you down, but also we just issued a new algorithm that throttles you down. We're looking at changing our news format. We're not targeting conservatives, but you're also not going to have any traffic. We're prioritizing stories, family stories over news. I mean, he just keeps apologizing and then doing worse things. Why should we trust Bezos when he ran Toys R Us out of business?
The point is we should. I mean, his company's worth $600 and some billion. This is much bigger than Carnegie and Rockefeller and Standard Oil and all this. I mean, these are exponentially larger. And given where our economy is, I mean, look. Standard Oil was pretty much a monopoly, and that was pretty damaging in the late 1800s. However, and I know it's not as important to have social media platform, but when you factor in all the business, 1/6 of the entire economy is generated online, which means that's, you're talking 1/6 of $20 trillion. That's a lot of power to wield when you can, like you just said, change your algorithm and your website. Independent Journal Review, IJR, basically went out of business when they changed the algorithm because they relied so much on traffic generated by Facebook that when they changed the algorithm, which, by the way, the algorithm change didn't affect leftist sites at all. What a shocker that is. IGR, that basically killed them. And there are other examples where Drudge went down a good percentage as a result of the algorithm change. But again, no leftist sites went down.
Well, again, I don't know why we should even be trusting them, beyond what we can see, the spittle on their face. Seton Motley, founder of Less Government, thank you for coming on today, sir.
Pleasure. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too. All right, we'll be back with the final segment of Stacey on the Right after this. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Recently, there was a mass shooting in Trenton, New Jersey. It's not national news because the victims aren't TV ready and the perpetrators were gang members who used the wrong type of firearm. Art All Night Trenton is an annual family-friendly event showcasing art, films, and food. Warnings about possible gang activity brought the event to an early end. Gunmen killed one person and injured 21 others, qualifying this event as a mass shooting. So where are the gun control rallies and exhaustive reports on the types of guns used? This type of shooting happens across the country every weekend in urban areas, so no big deal, right? Inner city shootings only matter to major media when AR-15s or assault-style rifles are used. The victim and perpetrators were black, and there will be no rallies. National crime is down, but urban gang violence persists. Either we care about all mass shootings, no matter who the victims and perpetrators are, or we don't. There is no middle ground. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
Hi, my name's Mike. Marijuana was my obsession, and because of this, I watched my dreams shatter like glass. I would have given up if it had not been for Teen Challenge. They helped me get my life back on track again.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
Yo, what up, Sid?
Yo, what's up, Mike? How you doing?
Man, I'm good, bro. Just left the club, the usual.
The club? Man, them clubs don't love back, man. You ain't learned yet. You better slow down, dude.
Ah, come on, Sid. You remember those days? We used to turn up together, man.
Used to, brother. I'm on something much different.
Like what, though? I mean, that Jesus music you be rapping about or beatboxing or whatever you be doing.
I'm saying, though, that's how I worship. God gave me rap, so I give it back.
Wow, though, gospel rap is boring, man.
Boring? There's nothing boring about the ransom that ransomed me with himself. Took me off the shelf to transform me into my best. Surrounding me with those of like minds. He drops bombs, some of which is found on urbanfamilytalk.com.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
You're currently the only woman of color with her own daily show on Fox. When I turn on Fox, and I do sometimes, and I see you, I feel like I'm looking at a unicorn. But there
By the way, that's my 9-year-old's favorite animal.
Really?
She thinks they're real.
I mean,
They're not? Exactly.
Exactly. I mean, it's fascinating to me. But you have been on the receiving end of some criticism over how the network covers issues that affect the black community, such as the NFL protests. You yourself came out against Colin Kaepernick. Do you get flack from the black community on your positions?
I get
for
flack.
being the only black woman on Fox News?
And Sunny, you have been in that environment, so you know, and you've been in broadcast for a long time, and you and I have talked at other points. I get flack from everybody, which is how I know I'm living my truth. I mean, I'm a military brat. So a couple of things happened as we were going through our sex and racial discrimination scandals at Fox, which, by the way, was like the tip of the iceberg when you looked across Hollywood. My goodness, Whoopi, you know this, because you know those players. I don't. Capitol Hill, still trying, some of the women lawmakers still trying to get male lawmakers to the meetings so that they can make new legislation to kill the shush fund and that sort of thing.
Do you feel a certain responsibility to the black community?
I feel a responsibility to everyone because my daughters are biracial. I'm in a unique position.
You are.
Okay, and I know you say the only one on Fox. Where's MSNBC's? Where's CNN's? I think HLN, and that's new. But sitting alone as a person of color, as a black woman, I do have a unique position, and sometimes people say things and it hurts.
So who is that you're listening to? Welcome back to the show, everybody. Stacey Washington, host of Stacey on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Happy Friday. You were just listening to Harris Faulkner. She went on to The View to discuss her new book, and it's a book that she writes from the perspective of a military brat. Her father was a flyer. He was on active duty. He was an officer, and she feels like her upbringing brought her to a place where she just has these kind of rules for success. And so she wrote a book about it. And she went on to The View, and they had a modified panel up there with her. It was her good friend from Fox News, Meghan McCain. As you know, they were on the same show. I believe it was Outnumbered that Meghan McCain was a regular on until she was hired away by ABC News to be on The View. And then, of course, you had Sunny Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg. And so Whoopi Goldberg tried to hem her in with some questions. It was really irrelevant. It was kind of a rude question that she asked. And then Sunny Hostin asked that question you just heard there about her being the only black woman at Fox News, which, I mean, I kind of wonder what Sunny Hostin thinks Harris Faulkner's role is at Fox News, because if she had anything to do with hiring, I'm not sure that Harris Faulkner, based on those answers, would automatically hire a black person to join the team. So how is it that you're held responsible for the people that work with you when you're not the hiring official? Harris Faulkner doesn't hire and fire people at Fox News. And then the question was so loaded. Do you get pushback from the black community? Well, I imagine that Harris Faulkner gets called an Uncle Tom a lot. And when she came out against the kneeling protests with Colin Kaepernick, people were really rude to her, probably sent her death threats. You know, she's huge. She has an enormous footprint as a regular host on 2 programs at Fox News. She's really one of their faces. She's been there so long, and she's been consistently a newsbreaker. She's brought coverage from the Middle East to Fox News, and her reporting has been stellar. And Sunny Hostin, honestly, after listening to her defend Maxine Waters' comments about running people out of public spaces because of their political views or their employer, it was kind of interesting to hear her say, do you get pushback from the black community? As if she wouldn't. She's on Fox News. I mean, it's one of those no-brainer type questions where you're like, really, Sonny? You know, if I had the opportunity to interview Harris Faulkner, I would not ask her if she had trolls who happened to be of the permanent tan. Do you know how many other things you can ask Harris Faulkner about her reporting career, her educational background, juggling being on Fox and being a regular there, not just contributing, but having her own program and being, you know, a co-host on another show. So 2 shows a day, 5 days a week. She's a mom with 2 kids. You know, there's so much that could be asked of her. I mean, she's one of my bucket list interviews. Like, there's so many people that I've wanted to interview that I've gotten to interview. But there are some people that I've never had the opportunity to interview them. And that's fine. I'm not ungrateful. But she's one of those people that I would just love to get the opportunity to ask her some questions on the air and hear her answers. And I noticed, and it's worth watching. I think I tweeted it out earlier, but I'll double check to make sure that you guys have the link if you want to watch it for yourself. The video clip of the interview, it's about 6.5 minutes long or so it's not a waste of time to watch it. And even Whoopi Goldberg's segment she asked the first question. It's really important to watch, in my opinion, if you're interested in seeing how a consummate professional deflects negative questions. She not only answered well for a difficult question about the sexual harassment environment at Fox News and how Bill Shine has now been tapped to work on the comms team at the White House. And Bill Shine used to be over Fox News, and he was the one at the helm who made some questionable decisions about how to handle sexual harassment claims that were levied against Bill O'Reilly and some others who are no longer at the network. But Bill Shine also was the one who launched Sean Hannity, the television show that has, you know, it's been the mainstay of his 2-part career in radio and television. And so he has some successes under his belt, and he has some areas where people have been very critical of his decision making. And Harris Faulkner answered the question without turning to the vitriol that would have been so easy. Like, I saw the opening for her to go there with Whoopi Goldberg, the queen of double standards, but she didn't. And she came off so even-keeled and classy and professional. And it was just it's a master class in communications with a hostile media environment, you know, but it's just an example of who she is as a person, which makes her someone admirable, even if you don't share her political beliefs, because she appears to be very conservative. It's still that she deserves some respect for her career accomplishments and for her ability to navigate these kind of really nasty waters. And she was fun and upbeat, and I thought it was really great. And so I hope and I pray that I'll get to interview her one day and ask her my questions, which will be so much more interesting and non-confrontational and adversarial. But until that point, I thought it was worth you listening to her say that, not just because she's a mom of biracial children, but that as a person who is a host on Fox News, she feels a responsibility to everyone. In other words, there are no viewers she doesn't feel responsible to. And that resonated with me because I feel the same way. Here on Urban Family Talk, where we are targeting our message to the Black community and we want people to, you know, hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. We want them to hear about marriage and family and politics and all of that. I do feel a responsibility for that. But we also have huge listening audiences from every demographic group who I feel responsible to as well. And so what I'm presenting here on a daily basis is me, you know. It's not Black Stacy versus White Stacy, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday. It's just me all the time. And we cover all of those issues and topics. And I think Harris Faulkner in that interview was a really great example of what it's like to be in a post-racial America. A Black TV host on a network where she's the only Black female to have her own show. Many Blacks on Fox News all the time. So the idea that she's the only Black face on the network is ridiculous. But she is the only one who has her own show. And the idea that somehow she's responsible specifically for anything that's Black, or that she has anything to do with hiring or firing, or that she isn't beholden to the entire audience because she wants everyone to watch, is so like 50 years ago. And you would think with Sonny Hostin being younger and having spent a lot of time in media herself, she wouldn't have asked that question because she would have seen from the giddy up that was really kind of beneath her. She's not new to this. She's not a YouTube star who just ended up on The View. You would think she would have had a better question. And I was really surprised by it myself. So now I'm going to pivot over to, this is pretty interesting. And I don't know if I'm going to get to it today. We do have some more time. But if you're like us, we just bought a new dishwasher about 6-7 months ago. And I think it works okay. Like I'm not going to start downgrading it. But I do remember a time when dishwashers were super, super effective. And there's been some changes from the Department of Energy. And if we have the time, I'll get to this comment. They've opened up requests for public comments about the regulators asking to allow faster dishwashers, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, the comment period closed June 25th, so you can't make a comment now. But this story is out yesterday, and it's about this whole idea that if you have anybody that you know that has an older dishwasher, it works better than your new dishwasher, which probably costs twice as much or 3 times as much. And that's because these regulations are making it so that the dishwasher manufacturers are having to make these products that don't really clean dishes, kind of like the toilets we're forced to use that don't totally work either. So right now I want to listen to Matt Gaetz. He's confronting Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein about signing FISA applications against U.S. person Carter Page. Now, what's interesting about this interaction is that Representative Gaetz is not playing around. He's not joking around with AG Rosenstein. And I tweeted this out, and I still maintain that AG Rosenstein, he presented himself in a way that was very, very squirmy and untrustworthy. And I want to trust AG Rosenstein. I want to trust Christopher Wray. But their behavior seems to me like they're more concerned with and focused on preserving the FISA warrant process than they are telling the truth and turning over requested documents to Congress. And I got a problem with that. As a taxpayer, as an American, I got a problem with that. So let's listen to number 4.
Deputy Director, the Democratic memo that the President declassified says the Department of Justice accurately informed the court that the FBI initiated its counterintelligence investigation on July 31st, 2016. Did any investigative activity regarding the Trump campaign in Russia occur before July 31st, 2016?
Congressman, as you know, we're dealing with the Intelligence Committee on that issue, and Chairman Nunes met with Director Wray and me. I received the same briefing that he received. So I don't know any additional information beyond what he knows about that, and I'm not able to produce any information beyond what the FBI has told me. So,
are you aware, as you sit here today, of any payments that were made to any person to collect intelligence on the Trump campaign prior to July 31st, 2016?
No, but keep in mind I wasn't there. I only know what information that we've obtained from the FBI records.
Are you, as you sit here today, aware of any efforts to contact Roger Stone that occurred prior to July 31st, 2016?
I don't have any personal knowledge, Congressman, but I know that we are seeking to respond to Chairman Nunes' request. I think one thing you need to understand...
Same question as it regards to Michael Caputo.
I wasn't there, and so I can only answer questions that we direct to the FBI and then have...
You're there now, right? I mean, have you asked these questions of anyone?
We have absolutely conveyed all the questions that Chairman Nunes has raised, and I'm optimistic that we'll be able to respond to him fairly soon.
How convenient. So I do understand the position that AG Rosenstein is in, Deputy AG. He's coming in after the bad acts have occurred. But he doesn't seem like he's that willing to kind of participate in the cleanup job. It's like he's an unwilling participant, which means that it calls his own integrity into question. And he's saying, it sounds to me like he's saying, well, I wasn't there. Yeah, you weren't there, but you should have reviewed all the documents by now. Like, you've been there long enough to have reviewed and been read into anything that occurred so that you can kind of say, okay, here's what went wrong. Here's the lay of the land. Here's some heads, a list of heads that need to roll, And he did mention later in the clip that certain individuals have been referred for prosecution or have individual investigations running against them, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. But why was he so squirmy? Why did he look like, everyone keeps pointing out how big of a Republican he is. That doesn't really mean much. You know what I mean? Like, I've met plenty of people who say they're Christians, but then when you ask them about, I don't know, do you believe that the Holy Spirit is God also? Do you believe Jesus Christ is God also? They're like, oh, no, God is God. And then Jesus, like, he was a man. And then you're like, whoa, wait a minute now. Can I share something with you? You know, I think you know some things that you shouldn't know because they're not true. That's what it sounds like with this guy. It's like, yeah, he's a Republican, but he doesn't really appreciate Republicans looking into what the agency he now heads up does, what the agency did. He doesn't seem like he's willing to hold anybody accountable. It's a little bit uncomfortable. So we'll see what happens. That's the show. You guys, enjoy the weekend. Unplug. Get in the pew on Sunday. Hug a friend. Forgive somebody. Do something awesome. I'll be back with you next week.